On page 2-5 of our notes, we're going to look at two things that can happen when we're solving equations. So normally when you solve an equation, you get an answer, x equals 7, or whatever that number is. What you are finding when you solve an equation is the one number, so that when you plug it in to wherever the variables are, you get a true equation. So it really does equal what it says. There are two other things that could happen. One is that you can't find any number to make it work, so that's no solution. Or you could come up with every single number and that would work. So we're going to look at the difference between these two things. So these equations are going to be solved just like the last set of notes. Distribute if needed, combine like terms if needed, move your constants to one side and your variables to the other, and then finish solving. So for our first one, we need to distribute -4 to both sides, giving us -8x minus 4 equals -8x minus 2. So right here, some of you will be able to figure out why this is no solutions. This is telling me if I go to my left-hand side, if I take a number and multiply it by -8 and then subtract 4, that should be the exact same as if I multiply by -8 again, but then only subtract 2 instead of 4. That is not possible. You can't multiply the same number by the same number, so -8 in this case, and then subtract different numbers and have them be the same. So if you can see that your variable terms match, but your constant terms do not, that tells you there's no solution. You could not find any numbers. If you don't recognize that and keep solving, two things could happen. If you don't use the shortcut, it would look like this. This cancels, -4 equals -2. That is false. That is not a true statement. So you can't stop there. Your final answer you need to write out is no solution. That's what I will look for the actual answer for this problem. If you would have done the shortcut and added 8x and at the same time added 4, what you would have is 0 equals 2, which is still a false statement. So some of you will get here and realize it. Some of you will solve to get this, and some of you will solve to get that. Any of those three things tell you that there is no solution. It is impossible to make that equation work. Now let's look what happens if we have infinitely many solutions. The left-hand side stays -5 minus 9x equals, distribute, 3 minus 9x minus 8. So the left hand stays -5 minus 9x equals -9x minus 5. So they're in different orders, but you can see the variable terms are the same and the constant terms are the same. So if you are doing the exact same thing on both sides, that means you could pick any number you wanted, as weird as you want, -1,000, 52.735, doesn't matter. When you plug it into both sides, it will always work. So if you realize that both sets are the same, you can right away write infinitely many solutions. If you continue solving, you would add 9x to both sides. If you don't do the shortcut, you would get -5 equals -5, which is true. So your answer, it's a long one, needs to be infinitely many solutions. If you did do the shortcut and added 5 to both sides, you would get 0 equals 0, which is also true. So again, whether you recognize it right all the way up here, if you actually solve to get a true statement, either way, you have infinitely many solutions. So when you practice, there is going to be a combination. Some of them might be no solution or infinitely many, or some might give you actual answers. They'll all be mixed in together. So let's look at number 1. First we distribute. 6x plus 6 is minus 3, x is equal to 6 plus 3x. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to combine my like terms, giving me 3x plus 6 equals 6 plus 3x. So again, hopefully you can look at that and realize, oh yeah, that's true. Those two are the same exact thing. They look different, they're in different orders, but it's the exact same thing. If you don't notice that, you could subtract 3x and get 6 equals 6, which is true. So infinitely many solutions. Or again, if you did the shortcut and also subtracted 6, you would get 0 equals 0, which is also true. Number 2, when we distribute, we get 12x minus 36 equals 14x minus 28. So as you can see, your variable terms don't match. If your variable terms don't match, you absolutely will have an answer of a number. X equals some number. So for this one, we would subtract 14x from both sides. And again, if you're comfortable with doing the shortcut, you can add 36 at the same time. If not, do those in 2 separate steps. We should end up with negative 2x is equal to 8. Divide both sides by negative 2, and x equals negative 4. Number 3, we need to distribute on both sides. 40x minus 24 equals negative 18x minus 24. Now you might say, oh, those 24s match, technically negative 24s, so that must be infinitely many solutions. That's not true because your variables don't match. That doesn't mean it's no solutions. If your variables don't match, you will absolutely have an answer of a number. This one does get tricky though. So if I add 18x to both sides and add 24 to both sides, I end up with 58x equals 0. Negative 24 plus 24 is 0. So again, a lot of people think this means no solutions because 58 doesn't equal 0. This means 58 times something needs to be 0. So you're asking yourself, what can I plug in for x to make this equation true? The only thing you can multiply by something and get 0 is 0. So your answer for this is x equals 0. 0 is a number, so you can get that as an answer. If you actually show what you're doing here and you divide by 58, 0 divided by 58 is still 0. So x equals 0 is your answer. And finally, number 4, the left-hand side does not need to be simplified. The right-hand side, 7x plus 14 when I distribute. Here you need to be careful and distribute negative 4, so minus 4x plus 28. So 3x minus 13 equals 7 minus 4 gives me another 3x. 14 plus 28 gives me plus 42. So again, maybe you notice variables are the same, constants are not, so they don't have a solution. If you want to solve it, you would subtract 3x from both sides. Negative 13 equals 42. That's false, so no solutions. If you did the shortcut and also added 13, we would end up with 0 equals 55, which is still false. So no solution would be your final answer.